In July 2022, 3 female European bison were released into a forest in Kent, the first of their kind to roam this land in 6,000 years. But just 2 months later, Ranger Tom Gibbs noticed that one of them had separated from the herd. When he found her, he discovered something nobody had planned for: a newborn calf standing beside her. Nobody had even known one of the females was pregnant. And this was only the beginning. West Blean and Woods covered 560 hectares of woodland that had been slowly declining for decades. But the bison were doing something extraordinary, knocking down trees, creating clearings, and letting sunlight reach the forest floor again. And soon, things started appearing in the woods that nobody expected to see again. Before the bison arrived, Tom Gibbs and Donovan Wright traveled to the Netherlands for training, the only country that already knew how to manage free-roaming bison in woodland. In Britain, no such experience existed at all, because the animal they were about to manage is not the American bison most people picture. The European bison, Bison bonasus, is the largest land animal in Europe, up to 900 kilograms, built for forest, longer legs, a leaner body, every behavior tuned for dense woodland. For hundreds of thousands of years, its ancestors shaped European forests. Then they were destroyed. 54 animals remained in European zoos, and every one of them descended from 12 founders. An entire species had to pass through that genetic bottleneck. What happened next is one of the most remarkable conservation stories of the 20th century. Scientists began the most meticulous breeding program in the history of wildlife protection. Every animal is documented. Every lineage is tracked. The first European bison stud book was published in 1932 and has been published every year since. In 1952, the first bison from the breeding program were released into a Polish forest. From 12 animals in 1927 to approximately 7,000 free-roaming bison across Europe today. Nearly 100 years of work. In Britain, they had been absent for over 6,000 years. Tom and Donovan studied the behavior of these animals, practiced safety protocols, and learned to read the signals of a herd. The project was named Wilder Ble, a partnership between 2 organizations funded by People's Postcode Lottery players, £1,575,000. The forest was divided into 3 zones, one under traditional human management as a control area, one with domestic livestock, and one for the bison, so that after years of monitoring it would be possible to compare results precisely and either prove or disprove that bison outperform human management. This was not a romantic gesture toward nature. It was a scientific experiment with a clear hypothesis and a monitoring program running to 2050. To understand why bison were brought here, you need to understand what is wrong with this forest. And the problem is not the one most people expect. Walk into West Blean and Woods and the forest looks healthy. Dense canopy, tall trees, ground covered in leaves. But this is a lie the canopy tells. Below, the forest is dying. Decades of commercial felling, then decades of abandonment. The canopy closed. Light stopped reaching the ground. The flowers, shrubs, and grasses that once formed a living understory disappeared. Without them, the insects vanished. Without insects, the birds and bats. What remained was a green shell, impressive from a distance, but hollow inside. 560 hectares, the largest ancient woodland block in southern England. Baseline surveys before the project began revealed hidden richness still clinging on. 178 spider species, including a critically rare species not recorded in Britain since 2004. A rare fungus beetle unseen in the country since 1988. Nightingales, lesser spotted woodpeckers. The biodiversity was there, but the forest architecture that was supposed to sustain it was collapsing. Kent Wildlife Trust had spent years trying to fix this. Chainsaws, machinery, manual labor. No budget can sustain that cycle indefinitely. What was needed was an animal that does this work itself. And on 18 July 2022, they knew which one. Rangers Tom Gibbs and Donovan Wright watched the 3 females in the first days. The matriarch, an 18-year-old bison from Scotland, 2 younger females from Ireland. The bull from Germany had not arrived yet, held up in paperwork after Brexit. The females did not wait. The matriarch walked into a thicket of rhododendron, an aggressive invasive species that human work teams had spent years failing to control, and began tearing the plants apart with her head. She emerged from the undergrowth, dragging entire bushes behind her. No land management plan had anticipated this. She was doing it on her own. Beside her, The younger females were dropping to the ground and rolling powerfully with their whole bodies, turning soil into shallow depressions with their hooves and shoulders. Bare earth that had not seen sunlight in decades. Within a few weeks, the bison had trampled bramble, opened corridors through sections of forest so dense that light had not penetrated in years. Larvae of dung beetles appeared in their droppings so quickly that one ranger asked, "How did the beetles know?" To understand why this matters, you need to understand what exactly bison do to a forest. 4 things simultaneously. First, bark stripping. The bison strips bark from living trees in long vertical strips. Eventually, the tree dies standing. A standing dead tree, a snag, is one of the most valuable structures in a forest. Over 2,000 species of beetles, birds, bats, and fungi depend on dead wood at various stages of decay. A snag forms naturally over decades. A bison makes one in a single season. Second, tree felling. The bison uses its own mass to bring down a tree. A gap opens in the canopy, a hole through which light finally reaches the ground. Plants appear in that gap within a single growing season. Third, dust bathing. The bison rolls on the ground, creating shallow pits across the forest. Bare earth is a critical habitat for specialist insects and plants that cannot establish themselves in continuous plant cover. Fourth, selective grazing. The bison favors certain plant species over others. The result is a mosaic of different vegetation types instead of uniform cover, and a fifth, less visible. A bison moving through the forest carries thousands of passengers. Seeds, fungal spores, microorganisms, all of it clings to the thick winter coat and is deposited across the forest. Every root is a sowing. No machine can replicate this, because it requires a living body in constant movement, responding to the landscape, not following a predetermined path. Early September 2022, 2 months after the release. Tom Gibbs checks the herd as he does every day, but one of the young females is absent. She has separated from the rest. He goes into the forest to find her. He finds her in a quiet corner of the woodland. She is calm, relaxed. He moves around to one side and sees a small head looking out from behind her. She had been pregnant and the bison had concealed it. Behavior honed over millions of years of evolution. When the females arrived at Blean, nobody could have known. She had entered this forest carrying new life inside her. The first wild bison calf born in a British forest in thousands of years. But the announcement could not happen immediately. Tom found the calf on the 9th of September 2022. The day before, on the 8th of September, Queen Elizabeth II died. Britain fell into mourning. The news about the calf had to wait. When it was finally announced, the reaction surprised even the project organizers. The Washington Post and the BBC covered it. Leonardo DiCaprio shared the news on his social media. The first wild bison calf in Britain in thousands of years became a symbol of something larger than one forest in Kent. The rangers watched her grow. The light brown fur of infancy gradually darkened to the deep brown of an adult. She quickly learned to roll in the dust like her mother, to play with the younger females, and to seek out bark on trees the matriarch had already begun to strip. She had never seen a cage or a transport crate. This forest was the only world she had known from her first day. 6 weeks after the release, a phone call to Rangers Tom and Donovan from the laboratory analyzing the bison's droppings. Scientists ask a question that is confusing them. Are the bison self-medicating? When the matriarch arrived, her droppings contained parasites. Within a few weeks, they had disappeared, significantly. The scientists wanted to know why. Tom and Donovan review their notes. Both had independently recorded the same observation. The matriarch was eating yew, a tree that contains toxins, in small doses, possibly a natural anti-parasitic. She had come to a forest she had never seen and found medicine in it. The forest knew what she needed, or she knew what to look for in the forest. The monitoring program is one of the largest of its kind in Britain. It will run until 2050, but the first numbers appeared within the first year. Slow worm sightings rose from 36 in 2021 to 58 in 2023. Encounters with grass snakes increased fourfold. Plant species not previously recorded in these sections of forest began appearing in areas where the bison had grazed and the soil had been disturbed. Species that could not have arrived before because the closed canopy had given them no pathway. But the most unexpected observation came not from scientists, but from Donovan Wright himself. He was photographing bison droppings and noticed fungi growing directly from them. Then dung beetle larvae within a few weeks of release. He wrote at the time, "Nobody expected to see this so quickly. How the beetles knew there were bison in Blean, I will never understand." The bull had been expected to arrive in August. Brexit had complicated the import of animals between Britain and the continent to a degree nobody had anticipated. Months of negotiations, approvals, paperwork. On the 23rd of December 2022, in driving rain and in complete contrast to the scorching heat of July, he finally arrived from Germany. His lineage traces directly to those same 12 founders that saved the species from extinction after the First World War. The herd was complete. That same month, Exmoor ponies, Iron Age pigs, and Longhorn cattle were released into the forest. Each species did its part. Ponies grazed down grasses, pigs rooted up the soil, cattle cleared the understory. But only the bison did all 5 things simultaneously. Only the bison needed no person alongside them. November 2025. The matriarch, the first bison female to enter a British forest, died at 21 years old. Donovan Wright, ranger at Wildwood Trust, said, "The matriarch shaped the project from the first day. She was the rock, the foundation of the herd, the cornerstone of the return of bison to Britain. She lived in this forest for 3 years, changed it herself, trampled the rhododendron, found medicine in the yew, gave birth to the first calf that Tom Gibbs found in a quiet corner of the forest in September 2022. She died, and in that same week, a new calf was born, the 9th in the herd." Heidi Agiragokoa, ranger at Kent Wildlife Trust, said, "Every change we have documented here, from forest structure to species recovery, now serves as a proven model for future rewilding projects. The herd now stands at 9 animals, 5 calves and 4 adults. A new female has naturally taken on the leadership role." The project is not without difficulties. Britain is not Yellowstone and not a 1,000,000-hectare reserve where wildlife has room. It is a country where every piece of land belongs to someone, is managed, and borders someone else's property. Bison don't make a tidy forest. They make a chaotic one. Fallen trees, stripped bark, churned earth. And this directly contradicts the British assumption that nature that looks well managed is nature that is doing well. Under British law, the European bison is classified as a dangerous wild animal. It cannot share space with people. 43 kilometers of fencing around the site. But the forest is threaded with public footpaths. The solution? Bison underpasses. The animals pass beneath. People walk above. The cost? £1 million for 4 crossings. When they are built, the herd will have access to 200 hectares instead of the current 50. And there is a question the project still has no answer for. In Yellowstone, there are wolves. They control the population. In Blean, there is nothing. When the herd grows beyond the carrying capacity of the enclosed area, someone will have to decide what to do with it. Relocation, coordination, or culling, with all the legal and cultural complexity that involves. The bison have solved the problem of the forest. The problem of the bison themselves remains unsolved. The trees the bison are stripping now will become snags over the coming decades, supporting species not seen in this forest for generations. The calves born here will grow up knowing no other landscape. They will learn where the best bark is, where the best dust bathing site is, where water collects after rain. They will carry seeds through the forest without knowing they are doing it. The monitoring program runs to 2050. But one thing is already clear without any graphs. A forest that for decades could not recover with chainsaws, machinery, and hundreds of hours of manual labor responded to the bison within weeks. Donovan Wright saw fungi in the droppings before anyone had finished writing the first report. The beetles arrived before anyone understood how they knew. What is happening in that forest in Kent is an experiment in allowing an animal to do work that people cannot afford, cannot sustain, and cannot replicate. She died in November 2025, leaving behind 9 animals in a forest that is finally breathing. The bison stripped the bark. The beetles colonized the dead wood. Light reached the ground. Seeds germinated. And the ancient forest that had been slowly dying beneath its own canopy, for the first time in hundreds of years, began to change.